All right. So what's up, dude? How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. I had the past 4 days off. My kids, my youngest, are all out of town with their mom at grandma's, and so it's been really quiet. It's weird. You got kids,
Oh
whenever
yeah.
whenever it's a little quiet, I get nervous, and so I'll go out in the yard and check on my chickens or play with my dogs or just get loud on a video game or something. Something to
Yeah, because you're a
used to my
teacher
kids jumping
too,
on me and
right?
stuff. So I am, yeah. Teach fourth and fifth grade art.
Okay. So you're used to the chaos then. You want that. That's like you strive in the chaos.
Yeah, I grew up an only child, dude, an only adopted child, and then I'm married with five daughters, and then I teach 33 kids 5 times a day, typically.
Damn.
So, lots of noise, lots of chaos.
Do you
So
reflect
the
your
solitude is
teachings with
terrifying.
your home teaching to like home teaching at all? Like you teach all these kids and stuff. So when you come home, do you ever try to like reflect your own teachings into your children, or do you kind of like let the school system take the foot, kind of thing?
You know what, man? The way that I teach my students is the way that I want to teach, which is why I like working in the district that I'm at, because they let me be me so long as I hit certain standards. And I encourage art at home, but I certainly don't force my views on my kids when it comes to being creative, because art is one of those things that it's subjective anyways. Your art should be personal, it should be for you. And so however you create is up to you. And I've always, you know, strive to teach that to the kids, because there's too many kids who come in and try and be perfect. And I hate that, because they're like, I just can't draw. And I'm like, no, drawing is a skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it. If I ask you to draw a circle and the best you can do is a potato, at least you're trying, right? You're getting there. And so that's the thing. And there's a lot of kids who just come in with that mindset that they can't do it, and they just are dejected from the beginning, and you have to kind of break that mentality. And so my kids, I've always, go paint, go draw. My 2-year-old covers herself in markers because I'm, all tatted up. She probably does the same thing. Just, hey, look, Dad's got it, so I can have it. To each their own with that.
That's cool. So you're basically like the cool teacher that does not give up on the kids, kind of thing, and wants to make them do the best they could possibly
No.
do.
Yeah, I try to be encouraging. So,
All right. So how was COVID for you with all this though, with like the distance learning and stuff? Was that kind of rough with you as an art teacher?
I use Zoom for all my classes. I didn't have nearly as many students as I had before. I'm used to having 33 in a classroom, and they even doubled down on classes so that we could have like 60 kids in a class. But I think I had that maybe twice the entire year. Most of the time I'll get like 13 or 14 kids who show up who are interested in art, and then we do art. The hard part was it's limited to whatever the kids had or whatever the school would supply to them, because I didn't get my own personal cash that I could give to them. But it was a lot of fun because I got to have them work digitally. They could work with paint. They could work with chalk. I didn't care what they had.
Well, that's
Just try the assignment I give you with whatever medium you want, and show me. And some of them would hold it up to the camera. Some of them would email me their digital drawings, and I would teach on an iPad and demonstrate, which was really cool.
that's cool. So do you have your students read your book? Any of them?
No, no, my students don't know about my book.
Oh man.
It's like there's morality clause, right? With work and stuff like that, which is why you'll have me on here. I'm not going to curse. I'm not going to do that
Oh,
stuff.
for
But
sure.
I will be honest. I will tell the truth.
Look
I
at
have the
that.
book.
Yeah, man. It is the
And
book,
this
dude.
that was the very first one ever printed. I kept it. It's all beat up. My kids have read this. I'm really proud of it, and we're still working on the second one. But this is just, the nature of it.
I'm
My
excited for
students
the
always ask me,
second
Mr.
one.
Taylor, what did you write? And I'm like, I've written comic books and I've written novels. They're like, really? What are the names of them? I'm like, I can't tell you. Find me after high school.
Yeah, find it. Definitely. Yeah, it's a good novel though. It's like a it's it's very when you were explaining it to me the first time before I even read it, I didn't know really what to think about it because I'm just such a movie and TV junkie on these sort of things, especially these topics. And like this, I just felt like this should be a show on the Sci-Fi Network, bare minimum. Like,
I appreciate
what I mean? Like, and I've watched all of the Van Helsing series on Sci-Fi recently, which is like, for me, was like a big show for Sci-Fi because they don't really like carry on shows that long and put so much money and time and effort. But like that, when I saw that, I thought of this a lot because I was like, man, they could pick this up and really take off with it because like it's not the like longest one, the chapters, but for what it is, just the detail in it was crazy to the point where like when I was writing down questions, I just was like kind of coming into these weird pauses with myself where I'm like, man, am I going to sound weird asking him that? Is he going to be looking at me like, why is he thinking that? But like, even like when I get into the book and everything, the first thing I wanted to ask you with that was like the character Reese and characters like Reese at the beginning of the book. Was those characters created to set a tone for the main character, almost making him like an anti-hero kind of thing? Because like you gave him names, and it felt like you were kind of like getting into like a almost like a going into like a backstory almost of what they would be like. Almost like I could almost feel like I was like, okay, these are these characters. This is their names. They're calling each other's names and stuff. And I was almost getting into those characters, and it was like, boom, they're gone. You know what I mean? And the reasoning through in the book too, it kind of was in the sense of that question.
Well, the book itself, I initially wrote it to be a comic book whenever I was working in comics and I was writing comics, and it flowed really well, which is why it is a shorter book by a lot of means. The second book is already longer than the first one, and it's probably about 3/4 of the way done. And I had these stories in my head for a long time. I've written quite a few different things, and I use a lot of characters to set a lot of things up. For instance, Anthony and Reese, they were coming in there, they were going to be the big heroes, and but you think about a post-apocalyptic society where the Earth has been laid flat, and you have all these different scenarios. They probably did a lot of bad stuff to get where they are to be survivors, And they picked up Maddie recently, but of course you obviously don't figure that out until a little bit through the chapter. And Kadeem, he explains himself basically about why he did it. It's like a natural instinct like you or I would have. If there's a rattlesnake and it's coming after me, I'm going to defend myself. He felt like he was in a scenario with somebody who shouldn't be there, and so he put them out. They served their purpose, they helped, and Kadeem is a very decisive individual, as a character, which is why whenever he meets Maddie too, he has a different type of personality around her. He's got a different way that he interacts with her as comparison to Anthony and Reese.
Right.
And, Anthony in the first place was like, no, don't go down there. Don't do this. He was obviously, a little more cautious about it, whereas Reese was like, no, we're going to go down. Let's pull this out. Let's move this. Here, let me get you out of the chains, it's kind of fun with that. I think about typical horror movies and how certain people do dumb things and end up paying the price for it.
But I didn't even expect that to happen even, you know what I mean? I thought that was going to just be like a set of characters he would roll with for a little bit and everything. And like you explained, like how he like instinctively acted, like if you saw, like you and me saw a rattlesnake and everything. For that, like it was just really like, whoa, you know what I mean? And how he explained it, I was just like, whoa. And then how it kept getting deeper and deeper. It almost made sense, and it was almost like how he explained, like Maddie's done bad stuff or whatever, but it wasn't like that, you know what I mean? Not to like death wise and everything, but like
well, from a book perspective, it's supposed to be jarring. It's supposed
Right.
to hook you. You're supposed to read it and go, wait, what? What just happened? And that's the reaction that I get most of the time from that scene in particular. Everybody goes, wait, what? And then boom, you're invested, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And then it's also it had a really big like Mad Max theme to it and everything. Like especially when he first went out of the thing and he was out there and everything. And you know, he ran into like the first hostile enemy, which was a shav, right? Am I getting that right? And and that just seems so like an outlandish terrain, like you're explaining, you know, prior, and it just like such a Mad Max theme. So did like Mad Max or any of those like old movies, like, you know, when we were growing up, was that any inspiration towards this?
You know, honestly, with me, I love post-apocalyptic movies, and I definitely loved Mad Max. Mad Max is fantastic. Mad Max and the Thunderdome is a huge part of my childhood. I liked, but there's another post-apocalyptic movie that kind of motivated me for this. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Doomsday.
Oh yeah,
And it's British. And it's got, you know, it's got Malcolm McDowell in it. It's got all this stuff, and I love that it's so different because you never know how people are going to adapt to the apocalypse. Everybody thinks, oh, it's going to be dust. There's going to be leather and whips and chains. And, you know, it's going to be S&M everywhere. But, you know, in that movie, there's little plots like where there's a castle, and then they set up in the castle, and it's like a kingdom, and you have a king, and you know, that's completely realistic. You never know how people are going to adapt. You have people out there who role play and LARP and would jump at the chance to do something like that.
oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and so I like that there's a lot of surprises you can write in a post-apocalyptic story itself.
So what other, like, was there any other books that may have like inspired you onto the being even?
Oh well, my
writing?
favorite book of all. My favorite book of all time is I Am Legend, and which is very post-apocalyptic. And please don't use cinema to reference I Am Legend. The novel itself is super short. Matheson, the way he writes it is just so beautiful because you take this person who is a human and then you put him through the motions of going against this new society where the world is covered in these vampire-like creatures, right? And then he is the outcast, and you get to the end and you find out that, you know, he feels like I'm legend, I'm the outcast. And it was told through a first-person narrative, which is very similar to how I write. I write with a first-person narrative. One of my favorite authors in comic books is Frank Miller, and he writes from that first-person perspective as well. And I think it's so cool to have it just always hooked me when I would read those because you only get that character's perspective. Like if I was telling the story through Reese's eyes or I told the story through Maddie's eyes, it'd be a very different story, you know? Immediately, if you're Reese and you're walking down to the basement, some dude kills you, you go, that's the bad guy. He's chained up for a reason. But through Kadim's eyes, he explains everything and it's completely different, right? And so I try to keep those views out of there. And so just, you know, inspiration-wise, I've read a lot. And obviously there's a whole lot of Christianity. There's a lot of religious ties to this as you go. And I'm sure you're probably already aware of that as you read it. And there's a lot of numerology in this and weird stuff like that. And I'll talk about that a little further on, I'm sure. But just there's a lot of inspirations for it. You know, I try not to just pigeonhole myself into a corner like, oh, it's going to be post-apocalyptic. It's only going to be tough cars and there's only going to be crazy people with like, you know, these mindsets. Whereas you could pull from a lot of different things. You could pull from mysticism. You could pull from religion. You could pull from science. You could pull from... There's just so much out there, and I wanted my book to have a lot of different stuff in there when I wrote it.
Right. So, like, that even goes back into, like, what I'm saying, like, it should be picked up by someone. Like, that's like a Kevin Smith doing Dogma. You know what I mean? Like, that whole aspect of, like, it's biblical, but it's not. There too. You know? Biblical but not. And then gosh, what was the other thing I was going to ask you with that on the same note? when Kadeem says to Tara that he remembers nothing of his past, but when he was asked his name, it came to him, was his memory loss due to his transformation into a constant, or something we're still going to find out later on in the series?
You'll find some more stuff out, but basically, your brain is always constantly firing those synapses, trying to figure out what's going on. And that is something that is definitely addressed in the second book. That is one of the first things that I do address in who Kadeem is. But yeah, it just kind of comes to him. A lot of stuff comes to him, like whenever he has these memories of David Bowie, he has memories of certain music. Because your brain clusters things, right? Certain things are associated with it. And so whenever they ask him what his name was, it just kind of fired on that synapses, and it just was able to pull that out.
Right. And then, the cog world with the whole, like a mechanical civil, it was almost I can't remember, it was like a rebuilt situation, or like a rebuilt civilization in that one, person's eyes. I don't want to say if he's a god or not, really. I don't want to give up too much to someone who hasn't read the book, really, on sense, but you know what I'm saying without having to give it too much away on that. But
about abysm.
Yeah, that part too. When I listen, because I bought the Audible also, so that I could listen to the Audible, and the actor who did the Audible was doing their voices, because they're professionals with that. And his voice he put down for that character is what I put in my head when reading the book. So I was just really that, because I was just so happy that I felt corrected on that whole situation, especially like I said, with the whole feeling of it and everything, the whole cog feeling. And I just and when you told me that there's going to be that's not it. That's just first of 3 installments. I'm just all giggity about that too. But with the name, even with Constant Gray, what did the name come from on that? Specifically, is there hidden meanings maybe that we'll find out later on down the road, kind of things? Is it kind of like a Easter egg trickle down effect or something?
You find out about Kadeem, and his last name is Gray, so obviously that's where the Gray comes from. The Constant is a title. It's throughout the book, when you're getting there and you find out that he is a constant. A constant is a title that I gave to the the overarching pantheon type of thing, which is all based off of the choir of angels, right? In my book, you have the virtues, who are the angels, which is, guys like Jolt, Foul, I'm not going to go further than that, but those guys are the virtues, right? Which is a class of angels. Below the virtues, you have the powers, okay? And then above that, above those two, who is kind of their boss, is the dominions. And the dominions are what I call a constant. And I use that to switch it up, so just because I like the constant, it's supposed to be a constant thing when you're in that place of power, because dominions give virtues, the word of God. They tell them this is how it's supposed to be said, this is how this is supposed to go, and that is why Kadeem is a constant, which throws everything into disarray, because he is above them, and so they can't do anything about him necessarily, because it would defy the word of God.
Right.
And so that's where the whole dogma mentality comes in. The dogmatic belief is that if you prove God wrong, you're going to nix yourself out. And so there's got to be a way to get the balance going, because they explain in the book that once a constant shows up, because things are unbalanced. Everything is about balance, which is why that number 12 is so important, right? The 12 apostles. You have the 12 virtues. You're supposed to have 6 good, 6 evil, because you can't have one without the other. And so when one of those switches over, the balance shift, which is why the constant comes in to destroy that one, to take the position of a virtue, to basically step down from a position of power to set things balanced, which is what messes everything up with Kadeem.
Right.
When him and Fal go at it, and then they're like, "Oh, great, you could just take that position." And he's like, "No, I don't want to do that. That's not in my mentality. I don't feel that way." And so, I hope I'm not getting too ahead of myself.
No, yeah, I love it. Yeah, so like, have you ever thought about maybe even like how you said it was originally supposed to be a comic and you turned it into the novel situation? Have you ever thought about making it like a graphic comic kind of thing and taking like not all the words that you put into the book, but like put it into a comic aspect with action and photos kind of thing? Have you ever thought about doing that and not going ahead of the basically the 3-part series, but maybe even making the comic for the like books as like when you're just like, man, I don't know what to do right now, I'm bored, you know what I mean? Because I've seen your drawings and stuff are fucking amazing, man.
Well, oh, you're too kind. I appreciate it. I feel like the whole reason I have another book, Anonymous, that I wrote that was a comic book, and it did pretty well. But the issue is I'm really hypercritical of my own drawings, and so I have a hard time getting ahead of that. And then you have the element of turning the book into a script, which is what comic book artists follow more so. And then you have the element of paying a comic book artist, because a comic book artist should be paid the proper amount, what they're worth every time. And I would love to turn it into a comic book. I just, because that's where it initially started. I've had 2 iterations of it where things were drawn up and set up. One was for Scattered Comics when I worked for them, and then another one was just a little private thing that I had my friend Levi work on. And neither one of them just kind of didn't come to fruition because of issues and hang-ups and things that happened because life.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I've considered. I try to get my book to all sorts of different people. There's an artist I really like. His name is Ray Dillon. He's a fantastic artist, and he drew a picture of Fowl for me. And I'm sending him the books. He and his wife work on Wonder Woman and all sorts of other stuff. And so if I could ever get the funds to pay somebody like that for it, I would love to do it. I'm trying to see if I can find that photo. I don't know if I have it on here. I might have to pull it up for you or something and share it that way. But long story short, there's still a lot of room to grow with this. There's a lot I could do with it after I get all 3 of them written. There's a lot of people who've asked me about Tara's perspective and doing something like an offshoot for Tara. It's definitely something that I've heard about, but I have plans for 3 books, and that's,
didn't she?
Yeah, with the Cursed Child, right? I don't know how well received that book was, but yes, that's definitely something that a lot of people did ask for.
And I think the Twilight series one, they're doing one with them too. It's like a perspective basis kind of thing, like the perspective as blah. You know what I mean? So I mean, I could see it definitely. I mean, that's the thing. Continue, bro.
There's a lot of elements for fan fiction and stuff like that that's out there, and if somebody wants to write fan fiction for it, that's totally cool with me. You know what? That's why we have wonderful things like Dungeons and Dragons out there. If you could ever turn it into a gaming system, go for it. My brother-in-law could probably whip that up. He's really good at that stuff, making rules and whatnot. And making up rules for your own universe is tough on its own because you don't want anybody to be overpowered. You want people to be too underpowered, and you want to represent what it is and have your characters have weakness and vulnerabilities and things like that to keep them interesting, because otherwise, who cares about an overpowered character? Yeah. No offense to Superman, but you had to give him the green rock to make him vulnerable, and that just, I don't know. I liked it. There's vulnerabilities for each character in my book, and there's different ways to do it because they're all based off of elements, right? Yeah. You have opposite elements who are more powerful than the element that the other person has, and vice versa. And fire is a powerful thing, as we've seen in a lot of different, different representations out there as far as people who mess with elements. Fire is really powerful, but I mean, you get somebody who controls water, and then it's a different story.
Yeah.
And
And that's where, like, how I could see it being something like, a TV show, or even like you just said, I didn't even think about it. It could be, yeah, definitely a video game too. Like on the aspect of like Mega Man, even like a single player, from there to there. You could beat it this way, but you could go the harder route if you want. Like it just has all those great aspects for me, and you know what I mean. With
I appreciate it.
With the new books coming out and everything on this one, are they gonna be taking on like a completely new title, or is it gonna just have like these be Constant Gray like 2 kind of thing?
Well, only a couple people know the title of the next book, and it's a
you don't
working
have to say
title.
it.
But I will be glad to tell you if you want to know it. You're nice enough to spend time to read my book, to promote it, to interview me. The second working title right now is called A New Testament.
Ooh.
And so that's what we're working with there. It's going to focus, if you were to read the back of the novel, basically it's going to focus on Avery. It's going to focus on Tara. And it's going to focus on some of the other virtues and Kadeem finding more out about himself. Whereas people who are curious right now, who are watching this, who actually read the book, Jolt will be, of course, the final boss. So look forward to more Jolt in the third book. But the second book, definitely we find out if Kadeem gets a shower or not. We get to find out more about who he is and what he represents. You get to find out about kind of what happened inside of Yggdrasil, right? Because you get that outside perspective as you go, and obviously not spoiling anything, but that's something important that does show up. There's a lot of questions that are left after the first book, and I left it that way because I wanted you to read the second book.
Well, yeah, that and you did it so well though. Like I said, I don't normally read like tons of books is the thing. Like I don't read a lot of books and stuff, and this just like it did feel like it was not just like a book, and it felt like I had the visuals. It felt like like a comic book coming out to me, because as a kid and growing up, that was my book, was comic books and stuff. So like I would just read tons and tons of comic books, and that's how it felt like. It's like I'm sitting there and it's just kind of coming out at me like a comic book, and I don't really even need to read it because I could see it. You know what I mean?
I really appreciate that, because honestly, I grew up on comic books too, man. One of my first, I fell in love with Frank Miller's writing style. I love Sin City. I love 300. I remember being in college before anybody knew what the heck those things were, before they came out with the movies and all that stuff, and just being obsessed with the books. Reading Dark Knight Returns, reading Daredevil. The guy had such a knack for taking a cheesy character. Daredevil, cheesy. Batman was cheesy. And turning them human and giving them human vulnerabilities. And I think that that's what makes his books so good. And just, it makes you connect with the character. When you can connect with the character and you can care about that character, you're in, Mm-hmm. You're there, you're going, okay, why is Kadeem doing this? Why is Kadeem going this way? And then reading Sin City, you go, oh man, Marv, he's all in. You know what he's going to do. He cares about this more than anything else, and he's willing to die for it, The scene I have tattooed on me from Frank Miller is the scene where he's in the church and he's got to the cardinal, the blam, blam, blam.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
The cardinal asked him, is this whore worth dying? Is this whore worth it, He said, it's worth killing for, worth dying for, worth going to hell for. I just remember that conviction of Marv's going, man, this character is something else. And then taking that book, turning it into a movie, and Mickey Rourke was Marv. I mean, He was perfect. You don't get any better than that. And all the other stories are great, but the Hard Goodbye was always my favorite. And I just love Marv as a character. And I'd like to think Kadeem has some kind of that Marv attitude, like, you're going to do what you want. I even make the joke about, that's a nice coat,
Oh, yeah.
When he takes that. And I try to put that into my books, and obviously look behind me, I still love stories. I love every story you can imagine. And I try to put that into my books, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed it.
I loved it,
really
man. I loved the book, and like I said, thank you for not only coming on and letting me do this interview with you, but thank you for fucking writing it, dude. Thank you. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I don't read a lot of books, and it just is like something that I was like, oh man, I want to read this. And even at first, like I read some of it without just like as is, and I was trying to read it drunk. And this is a very hard book to read intoxicated.
Which, if you haven't seen those videos, go to YouTube and watch them of Shay reading the book.
If that is not like material for like the dare to come back into schools and be like, this is why you shouldn't drink, like look at your streamers online, look at what they're doing, like that is a perfect example of what not to do, I feel like, because it's a great book, and I felt like I was butchering it. I was butchering everything, and I was like getting mad at myself for not getting the names out right. I was like, man. And then I read it all, and then I think I've read this book now probably about 4 times, and the audiobook, audiobook probably about like 12 to 20 times prior to doing the interview and everything, because I just like...
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because it was like one of those things. I put it on one night, and when I was going to sleep, and my wife's like, what are we listening to? Because I would put on all sorts of books all the time, because like, again, I don't like reading books. And I was like, oh, it's the book I've been reading, and my buddy, and she's like, oh, okay, let me listen to it with you and stuff. And then she's like, man, that she's like trying to like read, say they kind of follow back with me on that. What do you think's gonna happen next? And I'm like, I already know, but you're gonna find out. And it's great. But there's even in some of that, like even in the book, like when I'm reading it, I couldn't like predict most of everything on there. So it was just great. But yeah, man, like, I loved it, I loved it. I can't wait for the second one.
I always like things that I can't predict, because that's really the thing when you watch a movie or you read a book. You go, okay, so-and-so is going to do this. They're walking over here. They're walking over here. And to me, that's a huge difference between a good writer and somebody who is just kind of going through the motions. How many movies have you watched where you go, that's the guy. That person did that. That person did that. And to me, I love horror films. The 2 horror films that I had no idea what was going on at the very end, even though I guessed endlessly, number 1 was Scream. Scream was so good because you find out that there's 2 killers. If this is a spoiler alert, you're late. Okay?
Yeah, on the first Scream, for sure.
And then the first Scream, when you find out there's both, you're like, whoa, it makes sense now. Mm-hmm. I love that. The second one for me was Saw. You watch Saw, you go through the whole thing, and you're like, who's doing this? You've got this, and then you find out that John Kramer has been on the floor. He's the dude who shot himself on the floor. Then he gets up in the end, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I showed my daughter Emma the other day. We watched Saw, and she got to the end, and she was like, are you kidding me? I was like, dude, I know, right? It's so good to have those twists. It's tough as a writer to have a good twist, because sometimes there's a twist and you go, I don't get it. Why is that a twist? And then other times you have, like, back to I Am Legend. Whenever he finds like civilization and all the girls and all that stuff at the end of the movie, the Will Smith one, I'm like, dude, don't put that in there. You're gonna ruin it, man. That's not how the book goes. Yeah. The Last Man on Earth was the best representation of that book. I have to shout out Omega Man, because I really enjoyed that movie. It's a really hilarious version of it to me. But it was enough in the nuance and the lore of the book that it could be realistic. It is just funny. I love movies. I'm such a cinephile in general. And that book just, I don't know, it set me up. I read it on a car ride, and I get car sick, Shay. I get horribly car sick. Like, I read that book from a drive from Houston to Austin, And my friends were like, what are you doing? The whole time I was just absorbed. And that's the feeling I want somebody else to have when they read the book. I love when people read it in a day and they're like, where's the next one? And I'm like, it's not done yet. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. I'm not George R. Martin. Y'all couldn't yell at J.R. Tolkien. I don't have the,
Yeah.
God, no.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings doesn't happen overnight.
Like I said, man, it's really well done, and I really like it, and I can't wait for the second one, and hell, even the third one. I know that's going to be a while and everything, and I respect the art, brother. I respect it, man. I respect it. Even the front thing of it, like I put a thing on it. Even the front thing, I just love just everything about that. It's just so fucking beautiful. You know what I mean?
So, the fun story about the cover is I went back and forth with my artist on this, and she was great. Her name was Chrissy. She was at a site called Demonza. My publisher recommended it to me, and I told her, I said, look, I want Yggdrasil. I want the giant tower integrated with the world tree, right? I want the claw at the bottom, and then I want the demon face, and I want the human face, because it's a battle,
Yeah.
The whole thing is a big battle. And so I think it turned out really well. I have like a million different versions on my computer from her sending me. There's like a brown cover, a red cover, an orange cover. We tried different colors, different texts, different areas, and it's a lot of work, but it turned out. And then I chose the cheesiest photo.
Oh, that's a good photo of you, man. Hilarious. Come on, that's good. That's a good photo of you.
I took it with my phone. I was like, I need a serious photo because I'm have serious photos. Me, I should have been like with a unicorn hat on, holding my chickens, like just, being me. But I figured when you pick up a novel and you're like, oh, this seems like a serious novel, you would see me there in my sweater and unicorn hat, and you'd be like, no, I'm not going to read this.
It doesn't look too science fiction-y.
But some people might go, I want to read this. Look at that guy's unicorn hat. I need to buy one of those.
Be the top seller.
I think it's important to be yourself, but of course there's some stuff that goes into there that you're like, like I feel like I couldn't have a book without a Nietzsche quote in the beginning, because I read a lot of Nietzsche, and I always loved this one for this book, to be careful when you cast out your demons that you don't throw away the best of yourself, because I feel like that really attaches to all of the characters in this book, especially characters like Maddie, characters like Kadeem and Tara. Because could you imagine if Tara had a bad bone in his body, the type of terror that guy could create?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
but he's so naive, man. He's so naive.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be great, and I hope. I honestly, I probably am gonna cry about this until it happens, but I really hope this turns into a TV series, because it would kill.
I really appreciate it.
It would kill. It would definitely kill.
If you can get it in the right hands, I'm okay with that.
In the right hands.
Hey Ryan, give me copies. I got you, man.
In the right hands, yes, but I feel that in a TV series, you would have to have direct say, because I could only trust you with your story. You know what I mean? I couldn't trust to be like, hey man, I know this guy, I'm throwing it to this guy, and this guy calls you, he's like, I'll give you all this money, just let me do whatever I want with it. And I'd be like, dude, no, man, don't let them do whatever they want with it.
Well, Shay, I will tell you, I'd like to stick to the lore, but if somebody throws me a giant number with my 5 kids where they could be taken care of, if they would have put clowns in it,
I could see clowns in there, though. That's the thing. It's like I could see clowns in there. So hey, no hate on that. No hate on that. I just wouldn't I wouldn't be happy if they changed the characters' names.
A clown in now.
Hey, you could, man. Hey, I know one of the video games that you've referred me to most that I started playing, that kind of puts into perspective on that right there, eh? You could put all sorts of horror stuff on that, and probably with the hours you've put into that game lately.
You could.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Do you have anything you want to shout out that you're currently working on that no one knows about, or where people could find you, maybe on social media or something?
You can find me at most places on Twitter at the Ryan Factor. You can find me on Instagram at The Ryan Factor, and then on Facebook, it should be The Ryan Factor. I will tell you, if I don't know you on Facebook, I'm not adding you because you're probably a bot. But Twitter, you can always add me on there and follow me on there. I tweet a lot about wrestling and comic book art and horror, but I would love to answer any questions anybody has about the book. I love talking about the book. Can I tell you something that a lot of people don't know about the book?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let me see if I can flip through the pages here. So on page 121 is chapter 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want you to turn and I want you to find chapter 13 for me and tell me what page it's on.
Oh, I don't see it. Oh, is it like a hidden thing? Well, you're screwing with me now.
So you should see that 135 goes to chapter 14, right?
Yeah.
There is no chapter 13.
Yeah, I never noticed that till now. Wow.
Just like there's no 13th floor. 13 that's a forbidden number with me. I like to move around the chapters when I can, and most people who have read it have never realized that there's no chapter 13.
Yeah, look at that.
12 to 14.
Man.
And numerology, like I said, it's a big deal for me with the books. And even whenever I was doing this with Audible, they were like, you realize there's no chapter 13? I'm like, it's on purpose, just leave it, it's fine.
That's awesome. I never noticed that. That's awesome. What a cool fucking Easter egg to let out.
Not many people have noticed that. And so if you sat through, you found out a little weird Easter egg about the books.
That is cool. That is way cool. Hey, but yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this for me. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for continuing.
Of course.
writing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a school teacher and educating children in a hard time and not giving up on it. Thank you for being a good person, man. Just being a good, all around good guy. Look at you. You look at this guy. Such a good guy.
Stop.
Look at Ryan Taylor, the king.
See, the thing I want to thank you for, Shay, I thank you for having a wonderful outlet to create, because how did I find you? Go ahead. How did I find you?
Found me on Twitch on an off-shot game, actually. Off-shot free-to-play game.
On Paladins, because I liked Paladins and I thought this dude is hilarious. He's killing people all over the place. He's really good. I learned a lot from you, and luckily I made a friend out of it.
Hell yeah, you did.
That's how it works, man. Content creators, dude, you guys are so awesome with what you do. You help put my mind at ease all the time. I can't tell you, because there's moments where I'm like, I don't want to watch a movie. I don't want to do this. I'm going to go to Twitch and watch people beat each other up, and watch people play Dead by Daylight, watch people play Tekken, watch people play Mortal Kombat. You know, the world is a limit on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just nice, man. You got to enjoy it. And I know that I've seen you on there. I know you're a good dad. You're a good person. You're a smart guy. And so it's my privilege to be here, and I appreciate your time, Shay. Seriously.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, fuck. If anybody wants to get his book, make sure you go on. I get it from Amazon. I don't know if there's another outsource for it, but Amazon, I think, is the way to go.
You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. They have it on iTunes.
iTunes.
It is exclusive to Kindle, though. And so if you want an e-copy, you're going to have to go to Kindle to get it.
So you hear it.
But it's cheap. So
it's good.
Can't go wrong with that.
This is a good little book, man. This is a good little book, and it's going to get you all hooked into it for the next 2 that he's going to push out, and hopefully for the TV show to follow. And yeah, hey, like I said, hey, I love you, man.
I'm sure would love that. I'm sure.
Yeah, I love you, man. I hope this shit pops off even further with the TV show. I really do. I'm gonna promote it as much as I can until it's a TV show.
One last shout out. These guys right here, Acorn Publishing, they made it happen. All right, they listened to me. They read it. They gave me feedback. Holly helped me edit it. She did a good job. And, Jessica has been fantastic. If you guys are ever considering writing a book, look up Acorn Publishing. They're awesome. They're very helpful. They'll be there for you. And so yeah, there's my final shout out. Thanks,
For
guys.
sure. That's a great shout out. Acorn Publishing, y'all. Make sure you look into that too. I'm sure they got, if they're gonna pick up Ryan like that, I'm sure they got other people on there too. So in the meantime, while Ryan's making his next masterpiece, you can hit in some other books from Acorn Publishing. There you go, man. Fuck. Thank you so much, bro. That was great. That was good. That was good.
Yes, sir.
That was good.